Hello, my name is Maria and I have 5 classic recommendations that I think everybody should read at least once in their lifetime, especially if you have not read classics before and they seem a bit intimidating. If you're just getting into reading classical literature, or if you are a beginner and you're nervous and you're a bit daunted by the big classics, here are my small skinny recommendations of classics from an English major. Here are the 5 classics that I would recommend that are not as daunting as a thick classic would be. Let's start off with some niche ones that I haven't heard as many people recommend as some of the others that I am going to recommend today. So one of my favourite texts or books is actually a play by Oscar Wilde, and of course I am Irish so I might be a bit biased, but I think he's simply a splendid writer. I am watching The Crown and I feel like my accent mimics whatever I'm watching, so I feel like I'm having this Irish/English accent situation going on, but I don't normally talk like this. I don't normally talk like this. I talk like this. I don't know what's going on with my accent. But yes, I am a humongous fan of Oscar Wilde, and I had to read one of his other really famous novels called The Picture of Dorian Gray for school. A lot of people have recommended that book for people who are getting into classics, but personally, I don't think it was one of my favourite texts. I know, don't kill me. The text that I would recommend from Oscar Wilde is The Importance of Being Earnest, and it's a play. And it's really short, it's only about 73 pages. All of these classics that I'm recommending today are really small, so they're easily digestible and easy to read. The thing I love about this edition that I have is it's actually my auntie's, Catherine Harton, from 5th year. It's kind of like a family heirloom. Well, not really. And it's been annotated by her, which is really cool to see. Oscar Wilde's way of writing is really witty, funny, it's humorous, like I was laughing at some of the passages, and it just takes the mickey out of the aristocratic noble class people. Yeah, it's just really fun. It doesn't take itself seriously. It's actually really interesting. I actually have 2 versions of the Oscar Wilde's Importance of Being Earnest. Here's the second one. But this is a collection of Oscar Wilde's other plays, so this is not the edition that I read. I just like collecting books. So I have Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, which I highly, highly recommend. It's really funny and it's an incredible classic. It's so small as well, and it's a play. So I deeply recommend it. Okay, next on the list that I have is one by Leo Tolstoy, which is also really dear to me because I am Irish and Russian. So these 2 writers represent me. Irish and their sense of humour, and Russian, their solemnness and their depression. They're really depressing, dreary literature, but I think it's really worth reading. This is a collection of Leo Tolstoy's short stories. So one of the most famous ones I think loads of people have heard of is The Death of Ivan Ilyich, which is initially why I bought this book as well, because I was influenced by some other booktubers. Short story that I would recommend from Leo Tolstoy is actually Polikushka, which is here. Polikushka I read over about 2 years ago now, and the story has still stuck with me. It was extremely morbid and depressing to the extent that I felt like I was having a crisis afterwards, because the way it's just portrayed is like life has no meaning, or life is useless, life is meaningless after I read the story. But it's also really small. It's less than 100 pages, I think. One of Leo Tolstoy's shorter stories. I have attempted War and Peace, but I have not been successful as of yet. Hopefully one day. I think one of my biggest goals in life is to learn Russian so proficiently to the point where I can read War and Peace in Russian, in the native language that it was written in, but to completely grasp the concept of the book. But I'm nowhere even near there because I'm still struggling to get through The Little Prince in Russian. I recommend Polikushka. It will leave you staring into space after you finish the short story, which, as someone who really likes being moved by literature, I love feeling strong emotions. I love it when books make me cry, when books make me laugh, when books make me contemplate life. I love it, and I think Polikushka is a great recommendation. So you should read Polikushka. The next on the agenda, we have a book that I just finished right now. It's called The Outsider by Albert Camus. I never know if it's pronounced Camus or Camus. I think he's French. I actually bought this edition in the Shakespeare & Co. bookstore in Paris. Yes, I was that type of tourist. And I got the stamp to prove it. this book is only 128 pages and it's split into 2 parts. This book will leave you confused, as I was confused, and unaware of who to side with. It's so well written and it's so interesting that it just draws you in and you're conflicted on what side you are on. On one hand, something dreadful has happened, which, no spoilers, here is what one of the quotes on the back says. A story of a beach murder, one of the century's classic novels, Blood and Sand. Because on one point you can sympathize with the narrator, no matter how unreliable he is, and on the other you can view the situation from above and think like how ultimately bizarre whatever is going on is, that you're torn apart. And part 1 and 2 explore that. Yeah, it's simply profound. It's so incredible. I was left stunned after I finished this novel. I read it in like one sitting. I highly recommend. And it's really easy to understand, it's really well written, and it's quite simple. I do recommend. Next we have Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I love this edition. It's just so good. I got it in a secondhand bookshop. Oh my god. This edition was published in 1964, so it's quite an old copy. But the premise of this is that there's an aeroplane crash on an island and they're all schoolboys. They are castaways essentially on this island. You watch as they kind of replicate civilization and how they respond to their surroundings, and then some bizarre crazy stuff happens. So I just tell you what it says on the back. So an airplane crash lands on a coral island and the survivors, a party of schoolboys, find themselves cast away in ideal surroundings. At first they treat the situation with enthusiasm and all goes well, but their idyllic experience is threatened not by an external danger but by their own natural desires. So essentially they all kind of self-sabotage themselves and they're all schoolboys, so it's really interesting to see their thought process and their actions, and it all kind of becomes scary and terrifying and eerie. It really just replicates human nature. I think that will actually happen if we were trapped on a desert island with several other people. You hear stories about cannibalism and all of that good stuff. No spoilers, but you have to read this book. It's so good. Well, I suppose this is a modern classic, so it wouldn't be like a classic. I was also gonna recommend 1984 by George Orwell, the infamous modern classic, but I think it's so talked about already that I will leave it for another day. Lastly, I have The Great Gatsby, which is the most famous one, I think, that I've talked about today. And I have 2 editions here because I love it so much. One of them is my brother's that he read in school and that I read after. It's annotated in a really ugly fluorescent yellow highlighter. I think if you're gonna annotate books, at least use a cute pastel highlighter. Any of these would be good. Obviously The Great Gatsby is world famous, but I do genuinely think that it's an incredibly good book to get you into classics because it's really short. This is only about 115 pages, and I forgot to mention, but Lord of the Flies is only 190 pages, so this is, I think, 200 pages. It's the biggest one out of all of them so far. But yes, The Great Gatsby, it really is like a time capsule of the 1920s, also a story about love that ends up not being about love. The roaring 20s in America, it really just transports you there, and it's by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I think we all know and love him. Those are my 5 recommendations. As recap, we have The Outsider, Lord of the Flies, Polykushka, The Importance of Being Earnest, and The Great Gatsby. So those are the 5 books that I would recommend somebody who's just getting into classics or is dipping their toes into the world of classic literature. Welcome in! Welcome in. It's great. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. Please consider subscribing. I would greatly appreciate it. Lastly, this accent is really fucking starting to annoy me because I literally can't stop it. I'm not even doing this on purpose. I can't stop it. I forgot what I normally sound like. The crown has taken over my life. Thank you for watching and goodbye.